In episode 149 of the Guitar Music Theory podcast, I explain guitar octaves and demonstrate songs that use them. Greetings, guitar engineers. Welcome to the Guitar Music Theory podcast. I am your host, Desi Cerna. And today I'm going to talk about octave intervals. Guitarists often use octave shapes to play rhythm guitar parts, riffs, and lead lines. On the guitar fretboard, octaves follow certain spacings and shapes that you finger in a few different ways. I'm going to explain these shapes, plus I'm going to demonstrate how octaves are used in familiar songs. I'm going to play some parts from songs by Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, Blink-182, Foo Fighters, Wes Montgomery, and more. Some of these examples are actually a bit challenging to play, so if you're an experienced player who wants to sharpen your technique and be challenged by something new, stick around until the end. Maybe today's lesson on octaves is just the sort of thing that you should be working on, or maybe your playing needs attention in other areas. If you need help determining what you should specifically be working on right now in order to become a better guitar player, go to my website, guitarmusictheory.com. Answer the question I ask you about your playing, and I'll send you free custom video instruction that's calibrated to your current level. Whether you're a beginner still needing to learn the basics, or you need help with bar chords, finger picking, guitar solos, playing worship music, or you just want to delve deeply into music theory, I have a free course for you. I can put you on a plan to help fill gaps and help you progress so you can become a better player and reach your music goals. Enroll in your free video course now at guitarmusictheory.com. You can click on the link in the podcast show notes. All right, we are ready to dive in. And actually, the first thing I want to say is that I made a video for this lesson, and you can find that on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Just search Desi Cerna Guitar on any of those platforms, and make sure you're subscribed and following me. And I would also appreciate it if you'd click like and leave some comments. All right, so today we're talking about guitar octaves and the songs that use them. So I'm just going to briefly explain octaves because I have some beginner listeners that may not be familiar with what they are. And I'm going to talk about their basic use on the fretboard, and then I'm going to get into some good song examples. So if you are not familiar with octaves and haven't used them much, then you're going to want to pay attention right here at the beginning. If you're a more experienced player, then some of the stuff I talk about initially is going to be obvious to you, but I think you'll be interested in some of the song examples and what I have to say about them coming up later. And maybe just to give you a little example of what I'll be playing later, I'm going to do some Led Zeppelin songs. I'm going to talk about like the Immigrant Song and like the Wonton Song. I'm going to do some Blink-182. And I'm going to do some like Wes Montgomery kind of jazzy stuff. That sort of thing. And I've got other songs I'm going to do. We're going to talk about some Jimi Hendrix and some Rage Against the Machine and some Foo Fighters and stuff like that. But let's start at the beginning here and talk about octave. It's an interval, and an octave is the distance between one pitch and another pitch with half or double its frequency. In other words, it's a higher or lower version of the same pitch. You can also think of an octave as the same pitch in a different register. I talk about this in my book, Guitar Theory for Dummies, Chapter 2. So on the guitar fretboard, octaves follow certain spacings and shapes that you finger in a few different ways. I'm not going to talk about all of them. You can see my books, Guitar Theory for Dummies, or I talk about this in Fretboard Theory Chapter 1. So you can see my books to learn more about octave shapes. But I'm going to just talk about the most basic type of octave shapes we use. And that would be when your index finger is anywhere along the 6th string. Whenever your index finger is on the 6th string, you can always reach over 2 strings and up 2 frets, and you'll have the same note an octave higher. In this case, my index finger is at the 3rd fret on string 6. That's a G. And if I reach over 2 strings up 2 frets, there's G an octave higher. Same note. This G is just exactly double the frequency there. And I can move along the 6th string, and if I'm holding my fingers in this position, I'll always have the same note. So if I go up to the 5th fret, that's A, go over 2 strings up 2 frets, A an octave higher. B, B, C, C, D, D, E, E, and so on. Same thing happens when your index finger's on the 5th string. Here I'm playing C at the 3rd fret on the 5th string. If I go over 2 strings and up 2 frets, there's my octave C. By the way, some people pronounce it octave, but it seems to be the most more common here in the United States, at least, to just say octave. So there's C, and I can move this shape around. D, D, E, E, F, F, G, G. We're going to be talking about using octaves musically to play parts on the guitar. But octaves are also helpful just to track notes on the fretboard. Sometimes you might not know what this note is on the 3rd string, but if you trace it back down using the octave shape to the 5th string where you might know the notes better, you'd be like, oh, that's C. Now, when your index finger is on the 4th string, for example, I'm playing F at the 3rd fret on the 4th string. To play the octave, I reach over 2 strings, but I have to reach up 3 frets this time. There's my octave F. And the reason why I have to reach up 3 frets is because of the way that the 2nd string is tuned. If you're familiar with relative tuning and how all the strings match at the 5th fret, except the 2nd string matches to the 4th fret on the 3rd string. It's tuned 1/2 step lower. It's not a perfect 4th interval. E to A is a 4th, A to D is a 4th, D to G is a 4th, G to B is not a 4th, it's actually a 3rd. But then B to E is a 4th again. The reason why the guitar is tuned that way is because this has become standard tuning, and at some point in the history of guitar, various guitar tunings were used, but someone realized with this particular tuning, you could play bar chords. Everything aligned properly to do that, and it made it easier to play scale patterns and stuff that stayed in one position. So somewhere there was a nerd that figured this out for us, and this has become standard tuning. So it might seem a little odd. You might think, well, why not just be consistent and make all of the strings a 4th apart? Well, there's a reason for it, and it actually works better this way. All that to say, when your index finger is on either string 4 or 3, because the 2nd string is involved, or you're reaching over the 2nd string, you have to reach up an extra fret to play your octaves. So my index is at the 3rd fret on string 4, that's an F. I reach over 2 strings, up 3 frets, there's my octave F, and I can move this shape around. G, G, A, and so on. Or if I go over to the 3rd string, here's a B flat at the 3rd fret. I got to reach over 2 strings, up 3 frets on the 1st string. There's my octave B flat, B flat, B flat, C, C, D, D, and so on. Now there are other ways that you could form some octave shapes on the guitar. For example, if I'm playing F at the 3rd fret on string 4, well, I can reach over 2 strings and up 3 frets, and there's my octave F. Or I could reach over 3 strings. That would put me down the 1st string, back 2 frets, and there's F. So here I'm reaching across 3 strings, whereas before I was reaching across just 2 strings. So there are other ways that you could play octaves. You could also just play the 2 open E strings, 6 and 1. Those are octaves, and you can, they're 2 octaves apart, and then you could just go up the 6th string and play octaves like that. I'm not going to get into all the different ways that we'll play octaves. Typically, the most common way the guitar players use octaves on the fretboard when they're playing rhythm guitar parts or riffs or lead lines is using the shapes that I have shown you here. So let's talk about how these shapes would actually be used in music. So a common guitar technique involves fretting some octave notes, for example C, but instead of playing them individually, you would strum across the strings, but you would only sound those notes like this. So to do this without sounding the unwanted pitches on the unused strings, you've got to mute the strings with your fretting hand fingers. And the way that you do this is that you fret the notes with your fingertips, then you kind of lean your fingers back so that they touch and dampen the strings that you're not using. So my index is on the 5th string here. I'll start picking the strings from string 5 and listen to the strings that are muted. Since my index is on string 5, I can mute the 6th string by bumping into it with the tip of my index finger. So my index finger is fretting the C at the 3rd fret of string 5, but I'm using the tip of it to bump into the 6th string, and that's gonna mute the 6th string. Some people might wrap their fretting hand thumb around the neck and bump into the 6th string. I usually prefer to just keep my thumb towards the back of the neck for these octave shapes and mute the 6th string with my index finger. So when you get your fingers in place correctly and you're muting the other strings, then you can strum across the strings freely without worrying about sounding any unwanted pitches. And you also create some of this sound because of the strings that you're strumming across that are muted. So it adds kind of a percussive element to it, and it actually kind of fills out the sound and makes it sound thicker. And it's pretty cool. If I put some distortion on here, think about, Blink-182, something like... I'm playing my PRS McCarty 594. I've got Seymour Duncan 59 pickups in it. I'm playing through my Kemper profiling amplifier. I am using some profiles of like a 1968 Marshall Super Lead, except for that last one was actually a different Super Lead, but whatever. These are all Marshall profiles that I'm using here. Some of them are from Top Jimmy, and some of them are from Tone Junkie. Anyway, so that's my gear setup. Now, if you watch the video, I used a variety of guitars. I used this guitar, I used a Telecaster, I used a Stratocaster, I used a semi-hollow. Here for this podcast, I'm just going to stick with one guitar. But watch that video. You might enjoy my tones and my sounds. And I also have tablature in the video. So if you want to learn some of these riffs that I demonstrate, you can just pause that video and work it out. Anyway, back to playing these octaves where you strum across the strings. Don't get discouraged if this is new to you and you're trying to play them and things sound messy. That's normal at first. It takes time and practice to move around the fretboard and play octaves correctly. The more you do it, the more you'll develop just the right touch to do it well. So stick with it and be patient with the process. You can kind of clean up your technique over time. When you first get started, you're probably going to be trying to play these things, and it's going to sound like, you're going to have a hard time keeping the other strings quiet, and so you have to figure out, how do you lean your fingers, how do you bump fingers into unused strings. In order to get a clean sound. So it's something you just have to work with. And the best way to practice octaves is to play songs that use them. That's no surprise. All throughout this podcast, I'm always emphasizing the importance of learning songs and using parts from songs as kind of like exercises, and use them to practice and sharpen your technique. So with that said, I'm going to give you 10 songs that all make good use of octave shapes. And first on my list is Killing in the Name Of by Rage Against the Machine. So that was actually a clip from the video of me playing along with the track. So for this song, I am playing D octaves. I'm at the 5th fret of the 5th string, that's D, and then I'm reaching over 2 strings, up 2 frets for the octave, and there's lots of string scratching in here. So I'm using that technique where I'm muting the unused strings, and then I'm adding some string scratching in between to fill out the measure. It's kind of a percussive element here. So when I'm doing just the string scratching, I'm releasing the pressure on the D notes so that they too are muted. And then I apply the pressure to sound the notes, and I release it. Very common guitar technique here, where you would apply pressure and release pressure. Next on my list is My Sharona by The Knack. I used a Telecaster on that example. I was using a Stratocaster in the previous example in the video. Here for the podcast, I'm just going to use my McCarty 594 for everything. Here's the humbucker. I could split it if I want to sound more like a Telecaster, I guess. So in this case, the guitar riff here revolves around the notes G, G at the 3rd fret of the 6th string, and then G an octave higher. There's a little half step, kind of lead in, slide up. Then I go to a C, B flat, a little 4th to a flat 3rd there. So the bass player does this too. Classic riff, classic song. It's a little fun riff to play. It's playful how it kind of jumps back and forth between those octave notes. Not too challenging to play, so if you're still kind of a beginner level player, you can give this one a shot. You could slow it down a little bit too. That'll make it easier. Next on my list is Fire by Jimi Hendrix. That was played on a Stratocaster, neck pickup. The other 2 examples were all bridge pickup, by the way. Let's go to the neck pickup on this guitar. And let's see. That's full humbucker. Although these are low output humbuckers. Let's split it. Here's a split. All right, so with this example, you're not really staying stationary on one particular octave. You're moving around. This is kind of based in the D minor pentatonic or the D minor blues scale. So it's like... And then you have to follow those notes with an octave shape. I'm playing this along the 5th string, and then there's some 6th string in there as well. And you know, something about this song that a lot of people miss is the timing. The song actually starts on beat 4. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. You'll see that in my tablature there. I remember playing this song in bands years ago, and we were thinking that this first note was the downbeat. That was beat 1. And then when we came in for it went into the verses, we were off track, of course, because we were off by 1 beat. And I can't remember who figured it out, but someone was like, wait a minute. I think we had to start with the verses and then kind of backtrack, and we realized, oh, that first note would have to be on beat 4, a pickup measure, and then the second one would be the beat. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoops, where's my sound? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. And then everything lands on 1. The next song on my list that uses octaves is another one by Jimi Hendrix. It's Third Stone from the Sun. All right, now I'm in trouble because that clip from the video there was played on a Stratocaster and I was using the trem system. I don't have a trem system, so we'll play it without the trem here. All right, so this is in like E Mixolydian mode. So it's a good example of modes, but that's not today's subject, is it? We're talking about octaves. So I'm in E here. I'm moving along mostly the 5th string at the beginning of this. So think about E at the 7th fret in the 5th string. And F sharp, G. There's that flat 7D. That makes it Mixolydian mode, the dominant scale. And then I jump over to the 6th string. And then back to the 5th string. And then I have to do that holding octaves the whole time. And when you watch me in the video, you'll see that I usually play my octaves with my first finger and my pinky. You could use your first finger and your ring finger, or your first finger and your pinky. I am typically more comfortable using my first finger and pinky, so that's how I do it. That was the humbucker on this guitar. Let's try it with it split. Will it sound more like a Strat? So this gets, this isn't played too quickly, but it gets tricky because you're moving around so much. And sometimes you're picking the octaves, and sometimes you're playing legato and you're sliding into them. Hear how I didn't pick that C sharp. some sliding in there, and so you have to, that gets tricky because you have to apply enough pressure to continue to sound the notes, but not too much pressure that you can't slide. So, like I said earlier, some of these songs might be challenging to you, even if you're an experienced player, and give you an opportunity to learn some new technique or perhaps sharpen some technique that you have that could be better. Moving on, or moving on, as we say in the northern Midwest, the next song on my list is Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin. That was played on a Telecaster. You know, Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin is perhaps best known for playing a Les Paul, because we see him playing a Les Paul in most of the famous live footage that we see of Zeppelin. But he actually used a Telecaster quite a bit, particularly in the studio, and I suspect a lot of this overdriven guitar stuff that we hear on these Zeppelin albums is actually a Telecaster. So that's what I used in the video. This is Immigrant Song. Whoops, it's F sharp. Here it is with a humbucker. Here it is if I split it. So this gets challenging here with this kind of little galloping part and the way you have to alternate your pick and hop between strings. So if you're still kind of a beginner, intermediate level player, you might have to slow this down. But it's actually a great picking exercise, the way I'm alternating on the 6th string, then hopping over to the 4th string quickly, and then having to come right back to the 6th string. And, oh my gosh, I didn't think about it, but how am I doing this? So I'm going down, down, up, down, and then I'm actually using an upstroke when I come back to the 6th string. Isn't that interesting? Another way I could do this is turn my picking around and start with an upstroke. So I'd go up, down, up, and then I'd actually do an upstroke on the 4th string and then come back with a downstroke. Let's see. No. Hold on. I'm sorry. If I'm going to turn my picking around, I'd start with an upstroke and I'd go up, up, down, go over to the 4th string for the octave, up, and then come back to the 6th string, down, up. And that's screwing me up. I don't know if I can do that. Yeah, maybe there's somebody out there that'd like to do that. I need to start with the downstroke on this one. You know, I guess all this to say, sometimes it's helpful to think about what you're doing and think, okay, what if I change a pick stroke here? What if I change the stroke that I play on? How does that affect the picking scheme, and does it make it easier? So for this, I would just go down, down, up, down, up, up, down, down, up, down, up. The trickiest part of this riff is after you play the 4th string, the octave is coming back with an upstroke to the 6th string. Play this and you'll see what I mean. But this is also a great example of how I say, hey, if you want to practice exercises, base your exercises on song parts, because I'm very critical of some exercises because I point out that they don't actually prepare you to play in a manner that you would need to play if you're playing real music, you know. So you can prepare yourself to play in a manner like real music by playing real music. So this would be a great thing to use as a little picking exercise, and you can have fun with it and move it around and just do silly things with it. I'm playing between strings 6 and 4. Maybe I do the same thing between strings 5 and 3. Next on my list is another Led Zeppelin song, the Wanton or Wonton song. Okay, also played on a Telecaster. This one is in G, so let's hear it with a single coil. I'm splitting the coil now. This is tricky. I mean, you got some fast picking and some fast string hopping here. So it's kind of similar to the Immigrant Song in that way. In this case, I'm playing G on the 6th string, 3rd fret, and G on the 4th string, 5th fret. And I'm playing down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. A fantastic picking exercise. There's a lot more to the song, of course. You know, you have the... And then the next part, here's more octaves between strings 3 and 5. And that little power chord there. And watch me in the video when I do this part. I pick that up, down, down, up, down, up, down. I'm using strings 3 and 5. So think about that pair of strings, 3 and 5. I like to use outside picking. If you think about that pair, I'm coming at them from the outside. That's why I start the 3rd string with an upstroke. And then I play the 5th string with a downstroke. And then upstroke on the 3rd string, downstroke on the 5th string. Upstroke on the 3rd string, downstroke on the 5th string. Did I say that right? Most guitar players are more comfortable with that than they are if I play the 3rd string with a downstroke. Now I got to come up, lean my pick back, and try to hit the 5th string with an upstroke. That's usually a much trickier move. There was kind of no way around it with Immigrant Song, but here in this case, it's not necessary, and I'm far more comfortable picking up, down, up, down, up, down. A couple of downstrokes there at the end. This is a tricky little riff. This gets challenging even for an experienced player, so this is something you might want to slow down. You can experiment with how you hold your pick, how much pick is exposed, how closely you're holding your picking hand to the strings. How are you anchoring your hand? For me, I'm anchoring the heel of my right hand right down in the guitar body, getting real close to those strings, using a minimal amount of movement as I alternate my pick. You can have a closed fist, or you can have an open fist. Some of your fingers are going to extend. You need to experiment with that and figure out what you're most comfortable with and how you play this. I would not recommend that you float. And that is that you do not anchor your picking hand to the guitar. The only time I would do that is if I was going to kind of rake across the strings and do something like. doing that sort of technique, in which case I would not be anchored. But if I'm just specifically trying to pick string 6 and 4, I'm going to anchor my picking hand. Next on my list is All the Small Things by Blink-182. All right, so you just heard some of the video clips there, and there's two parts to this. So during the chorus, when you have the, there's a guitar, one layer that's doing this. Kind of a little pedal tone. And these are C notes, so I'm playing C on string 3, 5th fret, and then reaching over 2 strings up 3 frets to play C on the 1st string, 8th fret, and I'm just alternating. Syncopated here. What's syncopation? Oh, listen to podcast episode 148 for that. Accents don't fall on the most predictable beats there. That's a fairly easy example of using octaves. So if you're really struggling with some of these other examples, maybe start with that one. And then that's the chorus section, and then you come out of the chorus, there's this little interlude turn before it goes back into another verse, and the guitar does this. So now I'm playing C on string 5, 3rd fret, and I'm moving along the 5th string. I'm going up to F, E, D, and then my 4th finger is following along. It's over 2 strings, up 2 frets. And I'm using that technique where I'm strumming across all the strings here. I'm muting the unused strings. And that's how you get that sound. My next song that uses octaves is Everlong by Foo Fighters. I used my semi-hollow, my Epiphone Dot, which is like the Epiphone version of a Gibson 335. I use it for that track just because, I don't know, sounded pretty good to me, and I think that Dave Grohl uses a semi-hollow. Okay, I'm on my PRS here, my solid body, bridge humbucker, and I also actually need to tune down for this one. Let me go to tuner, drop D tuning. So I'm dropping my 6th string from E down to D. All right, let's get out of the tuner here. I'm using a fair amount of gain here, so let's see. So let's see. I'm playing along the 5th string here, starting with C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, and then it goes to an A. I'm using octaves. Just go to an A power chord at the end. But as I play those octaves, I'm also playing the 6th string, which is tuned down to D, so you're hearing that D through all of this. So it's like... And when I go to that A power chord, I'm actually just fretting it at the 7th fret using strings 6, 5, and 4, and I can use my index finger on this. You know, you can play one finger power chords when you're in drop D tuning. So that's how Everlong is played. Next on my list is Boulevard of Broken Dreams by Green Day. All right, this is in standard tuning, so let's tune this string back up. Of course, I'm not even using the 6th string, so I'm not sure that it really matters, but let's get back to standard tuning here. All right, so this is like an F minor. So think about F on string 5 at the 8th fret, and you're kind of going up the F minor scale. That sort of thing. So I'm moving along the 5th string there, and then my pinky is following. It's over 2 strings and up 2 frets. I'm using that technique where I am muting the unused strings, and then I'm strumming across the strings in a group. I'm using alternate picking here because it's 16th notes, 1 E and a 2 E and a. My index finger is fretting the 5th string, but the tip of it is bumping into the 6th string, and that's controlling the noise on the 6th string. That way I can strum freely here. My picking hand is not anchored to the guitar. I'm floating because I'm strumming. I'm strumming 16th notes. So this is a very common technique here, and one that takes just the right touch and finesse. It's something you just have to work on over time, and you'll clean up your technique and things will sound good here. And that's the guitar solo in Boulevard of Broken Dreams. And my last example is Bumpin' on Sunset by Wes Montgomery. All right, so I used my semi-hollow to get kind of a jazzier sound. I was on the neck pickup. I'm on my solid body here, McCarty 594. I'm on the neck pickup. And also, I'm not using a pick. I'm using my thumb. Wes Montgomery, famous jazz player, who was very famous for playing lead lines using octaves like this. And he would move around very quickly and very melodically. And he would strum with his thumb. He did this not only when he played octaves, he would always play that way. And it gives it a soft sound. So neck pickup, hollow body if you've got it. Maybe I could roll off on my tone a little bit just to darken it a little bit. So this one is probably going to be the trickiest because of the way it's moving around here. If I just play single notes here, so this is on string 5, 4, 3. So I'm really jumping around, and I'm moving in like the A minor pentatonic. I keep wanting to grab a pick. And he uses some of the blues scale, and he uses some chromatic. But the way it just moves around between strings makes it more challenging. So unlike, say, the last one the Green Day song where everything was on, your index was rooted on the 5th string. You're just moving horizontally. Here, you're sometimes moving horizontally, but you're also moving vertically. You're making these jumps across strings. So like that string 5 and 3, 3 and 2, 3 and 1. And some. I have trouble doing that with all downstrokes with my thumb. That was my finger alternating. But really some nice lines here, octaves aside, if you just want to learn how to phrase like A minor pentatonic, you know. If you just take the octaves out, there's some nice use of chromatics there. And how about this line? There's the blues scale, and then some more chromatic. And if you do that with the octaves. So that's Wes Montgomery playing octaves here, jumping across strings. Probably the most challenging of all of the examples I've given you. All right, podcast episode 149 is a wrap. Hopefully you now understand what guitar octaves are and how they are used in music. Perhaps this is just the sort of thing you should be working on right now. Or maybe your playing needs attention in other areas. If you need help determining what you should specifically be working on right now to become a better guitar player, go to my website, guitarmusictheory.com. Answer the question I ask you about your playing, and I'll send you free custom video instruction that is calibrated to your current level. Whether you're a beginner still needing to learn the basics, or you need help with bar chords, finger picking, guitar soloing, playing worship music, or you want to delve deeply into music theory, I have a free course for you. I can put you on a plan to fill gaps in your playing so you can become a better player, you can make progress, and you can reach your music goals. Enroll in your free video course now at guitarmusictheory.com. You can click on the link in the podcast show notes. Well, thanks for listening, guitar engineers. I'm Desi Cerna. Before you go, be sure to subscribe to this podcast, give it a 5-star rating, and leave a review if you can. Then keep playing and stay tuned for more.